Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back, everyone. It's another week of live radio right here on the Kev Baker Show with me, you guessed it, your host, Kev Baker. Now I'm coming to you live from Glasgow, Scotland, and we're broadcasting on the number one network, Truth Frequency Radio, truthfrequencyradio.com. Now, there's so many different ways to listen to your favourite shows on here now. You can do it over on iHeartRadio, TalkStream Live. You can get us in the chat room here at truthfrequencyradio.com/chat. So many ways to listen to, like I say, your favourite shows. And tonight here on the Kev Baker Show, we're going to have an absolutely massive night because we're teaming up again with our good friend, our quantumly entangled buddy, Mr. Anthony Patch. But before we get to Tony, let me go to my co-host, Mr. Johnny Whistles. And John, it's going to be another huge night right here on KBS, and I hope you've had a good weekend, brother.
Yeah, I did have a good weekend. Got June's grandson staying with us for a few days, so yeah, we've had some good fun here, Kev, with the wee man.
Excellent stuff, because truly that's what it's all about. It's all about family, those closest to us. And tonight we're really going to be getting into some really deep and heavy topics. Nothing new with my good friend then, Mr. Anthony Patch. Now, Anthony, he's got his own show here on a Friday night. You can tune in live just before Freaky Friday at 10 p.m. in the UK, 5 p.m. on the East Coast, and that's 2 p.m. on the West Coast. Now, he's an author as well. He's wrote a number of books: Covert Catastrophe, 2048, Diamonds in the Rough, and most recently, Revising Reality. Now, he's working on another book that I laughingly say is going to end up like War and Peace, because he's just coming over so much new information right now and keeps connecting the dots. But keep your eyes open for a book called Coalescence. Now, before I go to Tony, you can also hear him and another couple of our guests here from the show, Ilana Freeland and Michael Sweeney. They're all going to be speaking at something called the Ground Zero University. Now, this is a get-together on the 14th and 15th of April, and it's organised by our good friends over at Ground Zero Media, Clyde Lewis and Ron Patton. So if you can, I urge you all to get there, and you can check out the website if you go to kxl.com/event/ground-zero-university. I'll drop that in the chat, but without wasting any more time, Anthony Patch, welcome back, brother. And this makes a change, because usually I'm flying kind of as your wingman on your show.
Well, you're always flying high. I don't know what you're on, but it's always a lot of fun to be with you and Johnny Whistles.
Oh, well, you know, as always, there's going to be some big news that we get into tonight. But before we get into the kind of topics that people are used to hearing us talking about, Tony, I mean, there's big news going on in the world right now. We've had Donald Trump and the airstrikes on Syria. And for me, you know, all of this actually ties in with all the topics that we're going to be talking about tonight. But what's your thoughts on recent events in Syria?
Yeah, well, most everybody's, heard about the missile strikes, and there were about 23 on-target Tomahawk missiles. These are cruise missiles that came in. And the long and short of that whole event is I believe this was a litmus test. This was a testing of the S-300 and S-400 ballistic missile.
Yeah, already, I see. And we'll reconnect in just a moment. But Johnny Whistles, you've been watching what's been going on over in Syria. And what's your thoughts on this, man? Because, I wasn't expecting it, to be honest with you. But your thoughts on what's gone on over the weekend?
Kev, I honestly wonder if these things are bluster, really, because the amount of times that we hear that this thing it's that close to going war, and I believe that we are. Whether we actually go to war is another thing. And all it takes is, there's Russia have already said that they won't be asking America where their planes are, and they won't be telling them where theirs is. So you can see maybe something coming from that, because if one of these planes gets shot down, Kev, you know it's game on.
It really is. And, I still am struggling to see how Donald Trump has fallen for what I suspect is yet another chemical false flag, because we've seen this happen before, 2013. And it's almost like a rerun of that. And now here we are, 2017. We've had these missiles going in. And worryingly today, we've had the White House coming out and saying, look, they won't hesitate to do this again if we find that chemical weapons are being used, John. And I'm no expert, right? I was in the military for a blink of an eye, never went to war. But doesn't that really tell anyone out there, well, if I use chemical weapons now, then Assad's going to get the blame without anyone really looking into it. So anyone using chemical weapons is going to bring hell down on the Syrian regime. False flag season, Johnny?
Okay, as we said, it's probably the last thing, and I don't even think he would do it, but it's the last thing that Bashar al-Assad would ever do, sending that kind of thing, especially with the world's eyes on Syria and people wanting to go in there and actually raise the place to the ground. So this is another 2013-14, Kev. It's the exact same thing. They're blaming it on this one, actually, Kev.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back, everyone. It's another week of live radio right here on the Kev Baker Show with me, you guessed it, your host, Kev Baker. Now I'm coming to you live from Glasgow, Scotland, and we're broadcasting on the number one network, Truth Frequency Radio, truthfrequencyradio.com. Now, there's so many different ways to listen to your favourite shows on here now. You can do it over on iHeartRadio, TalkStream Live. You can get us in the chat room here at truthfrequencyradio.com/chat. So many ways to listen to, like I say, your favourite shows. And tonight here on the Kev Baker Show, we're going to have an absolutely massive night because we're teaming up again with our good friend, our quantumly entangled buddy, Mr. Anthony Patch. But before we get to Tony, let me go to my co-host, Mr. Johnny Whistles. And John, it's going to be another huge night right here on KBS, and I hope you've had a good weekend, brother.
Yeah, I did have a good weekend. Got June's grandson staying with us for a few days. So, yeah, we've had some good fun here, Kev, with the wee man.
Excellent stuff, because truly that's what it's all about. It's all about family, those closest to us. And tonight we're really going to be getting into some really deep and heavy topics. Nothing new with my good friend then, Mr. Anthony Patch. Now, Anthony, he's got his own show here on a Friday night. You can tune in live just before Freaky Friday at 10 p.m. in the UK, 5 p.m. on the East Coast, and that's 2 p.m. on the West Coast. Now, he's an author as well. He's wrote a number of books: Covert Catastrophe, 2048, Diamonds in the Rough, and most recently, Revising Reality. Now, he's working on another book that I laughingly say is going to end up like War and Peace, because he's just coming over so much new information right now and keeps connecting the dots. But keep your eyes open for a book called Coalescence. Now, before I go to Tony, you can also hear him and another couple of our guests here from the show, Ilana Freeland and Michael Sweeney. They're all going to be speaking at something called the Ground Zero University. Now, this is a get-together on the 14th and 15th of April, and it's organised by our good friends over at Ground Zero Media, Clyde Lewis and Ron Patton. So if you can, I urge you all to get there, and you can check out the website if you go to kxl.com/event/ground-zero-university. I'll drop that in the chat, but without wasting any more time, Anthony Patch, welcome back, brother. And this makes a change, because usually I'm flying kind of as your wingman on your show.
Well, you're always flying high. I don't know what you're on, but it's always a lot of fun to be with you and Johnny Whistles.
Oh, well, as always, there's going to be some big news that we get into tonight. But before we get into the kind of topics that people are used to hearing us talking about, Tony, I mean, there's big news going on in the world right now. We've had Donald Trump and the airstrikes on Syria. And for me, all of this actually ties in with all the topics that we're going to be talking about tonight. But what's your thoughts on recent events in Syria?
Yeah, well, most everybody's heard about the missile strikes, and there were about 23 on-target Tomahawk missiles. These are cruise missiles that came in, and the long and short of that whole event is I believe this was a litmus test. This was a testing of the S-300 and S-400 ballistic missile.
Yeah, already, I see. And we'll reconnect in just a moment. But Johnny Whistles, you've been watching what's been going on over in Syria. And what's your thoughts on this, man? Because, I wasn't expecting it, to be honest with you. But your thoughts on what's gone on over the weekend?
Kev, I honestly wonder if these things are bluster, really, because the amount of times that we hear that this thing it's that close to going war, and I believe that we are. Whether we actually go to war is another thing. And all it takes is, there's Russia have already said that they won't be asking America where their planes are, and they won't be telling them where theirs is. So you can see maybe something coming from that, because if one of these planes gets shot down, Kev, it's game on.
It really is. And, I still am struggling to see how Donald Trump has fallen for what I suspect is yet another chemical false flag, because we've seen this happen before, 2013. And it's almost like a rerun of that. And now here we are, 2017. We've had these missiles going in. And worryingly today, we've had the White House coming out and saying, look, they won't hesitate to do this again if we find that chemical weapons are being used, John. And I'm no expert, right? I was in the military for a blink of an eye, never went to war. But doesn't that really tell anyone out there, well, if I use chemical weapons now, then Assad's going to get the blame without anyone really looking into it. So anyone using chemical weapons is going to bring hell down on the Syrian regime. False flag season, Johnny?
Okay, as we said, it's probably the last thing, and I don't even think he would do it, but it's the last thing that Bashar al-Assad would ever do, sending that kind of thing, especially with the world's eyes on Syria and people wanting to go in there and actually raise the place to the ground. So this is another 2013-14, Kev. It's the exact same thing. They're blaming it on this one, actually, Kev, might have happened because of the place that gets struck with the missiles, the depot, and maybe it came from there, if it did actually happen at all. And to be honest with you, Kev, it really, chemical weapons from Assad, it doesn't add up.
Well, they're now trying to show you containers that are at the air base that Trump and the missiles hit afterwards. I'm still not buying any of this, and thankfully we have got Anthony Patch back with us. Tony, your thoughts on Syria after that rude interruption?
Yeah, are you there?
I'm here, Anthony. Can you hear us? Tony.
Hang on a sec.
He's a bit quiet there, Johnny, but we're going to get him. We're almost there, man. We're almost there. It's going to be interesting to see what happens now, because from what I can make out, and I can't confirm this, but listening to Alex Jones today and various other sources, it looks as if there's almost troops ready now to go into Syria. And that's quite worrying. That would be a very worrying escalation indeed. But again, it all ties in with the times that we are living. Anthony, are you with us?
Not yet, Kev.
Well, I will try and phone him back in a moment. And we'll have to keep an eye on this one, Johnny. But luckily enough, right, I don't know if you've seen this, right? we had the Russians. They came out. And we had Boris Johnson making a big song and a dance about how he was cancelling his trip over to Moscow. And the Russians basically turned around and said, Bojo who? As if we care about the British. You're irrelevant right now. And when
exactly.
Over there, Johnny, I'm quite glad that they see us as being irrelevant. Because me, personally, I don't want to get involved in anything like that. A war with Russia? Are you mad?
That's absolutely nuts, Kev, as you say. And we've got that Tillerson going over. I don't know if it's a couple of days or he might even be over there just now, Kev, probably talking to Lavrov. It will be interesting. I would love to be at that meeting. I would love to be a fly in the wall at that meeting because that would be absolutely fantastic. Some of the things that they are going to talk about that we won't hear about, Kev. It will be actually good to see what comes out of that meeting.
There we are, Tony. We can hear you now, brother. Let's get right into it, Tony. Syria, your thoughts on that, man?
Yeah, I just think that Syria was just a test. They were testing out the air defense systems, and they wanted to do that before they sent in our piloted aircraft. It was obvious that the system wasn't able to detect the low-flying Tomahawks that were only about 50 to 100 feet off the deck, off the water, and they were launched over the horizon. They've moved in the BUK-M3 anti-missile system and anti-aircraft system, so that probably is going to be, sort of the final straw. They're not going to be able to mass a cruise missile attack like that again. So it wasn't really the airfields they were after, in my opinion. And then we've got China massing on the North Korean border, but again, that is to go against the United States. China is not going to invade North Korea and take out the missile sites. China's there to defend those missile sites. So we've got it going on both sides of the world here at the same time.
And Tony, we talk about the end times, and you know a lot more about that than I do. And Damascus, it obviously features very highly. Now, are we basically watching this all unfolding right now? Is Damascus very much at the center of things?
Yeah, according to Isaiah 17, Damascus ceases to exist overnight. By the morning, it's virtually wiped off the map. That's the headquarters underground for Assad, and that is what they want to take out as the command and control center. But that's not going to be just the United States. It'll be Israel involved. Israel's already been conducting for the last week their drills, as they're called, in the Golan Heights. Now, just to jump forward a bit so that people understand the context of what's going on, the largest natural gas deposit in the world is the Leviathan natural gas field, which is under the seabed between Cyprus off the coast of Israel and Israel itself. That is one of the objectives for Russia, is to take control of that. They want to run a natural gas pipeline through Turkey, through Syria, into Israel, and all the way into the greater Middle East, but primarily to tap into the Leviathan. The other is, in the Golan Heights, is the source of all of the oil for the Middle East. About a year ago, the discovery of this was announced, and that as well is what in Scripture is known as the hooks in the jaw that Gog-Magog cannot resist in terms of that battle. So Russia cannot resist the temptation to go after these natural resources. They're just too valuable, and they want control of that. So go ahead.
Well, this is something that we're obviously all going to have to keep our eye on, because this is going to feature very, very prominently if we are in the end times. Now, Tony, we've got so many topics to hit in so short a time. So I want to go to the Burning Man Festival first. And this is something I've heard you speaking about on your show. And I've taken a little look at the website, and I tell you, that is one woo-filled festival. The theme for this year itself is called Radical Rituals. Now, I can't even say that in my own mind without casting my mind back to when we were talking about rules for radicals when the election was on. So, and of course, we discovered then the radical, the kind of head honcho guy, was Lucifer. So when I'm looking at the language used here for this ritual, this gathering, this Burning Man event, radical rituals, Lucifer rituals, What's going on, Tony?
Yeah, Burning Man takes place in the Nevada desert. It's called the Black Rock Desert. I've spent a lot of time there myself, and they have an annual event. This time it's August 27th through September 4th, and if people will go to the burningman.org website, they'll see what it is that we're discussing here. But what really catches my attention, and should a lot of people, is not only the theme radical ritual, which has everything to do with, the ritual that is taking place in September. And I'm being very short here because we've got a lot to cover. But what this event, this ritual at Burning Man in the playa, has everything to do with the resurrection of DNA. If you go through and look at the language they're using on their website and look at the artwork for their proposed temples that they're going to erect, one of the temples is an 8-sided octagon that looks like a Japanese pagoda or a gazebo, and it has a golden spike, a spire, emanating from within the center of this pagoda up into the air. And what this is representative of, among many things, is the 8-sided octagonal-shaped detectors at CERN. They're 8-sided for a reason. The detectors and this pagoda, we'll call it, or this gazebo, is 8-sided because they are birthing the Ogdoad. The Ogdoad are the 8 deities from Egypt that they worship. This, whenever you see 8, it's because they're trying to resurrect the 8 deities, the godheads of Egypt. Now, the fact that they have a golden spire indicates that that's the golden spike. That is the gold that will be used in this resurrection process. It is also representative of the connection that will take place electrically between CERN and Saturn that we've talked about so much. But the other temple that they're going to build, and literally they call it a temple, is a temple constructed of wood that they will burn, hence the Burning Man event. But they will burn this temple that is is configured as a temple that looks exactly like a pyramid. Okay, so what we're witnessing here across the world, not just the Burning Man event in Nevada in the United States, is a reverse exodus. This is moving back to Egypt. Okay, I'm not talking about the Jews are conducting a reverse exodus. I'm talking about the occultists, the mystery societies, the New World Order leadership. This is all grounded in Egypt. So Burning Man is celebrating the return to Egypt and the temples and the pyramids by these rituals. Burning Man will take place right after the eclipse itself. So what we're about to launch into, August 21st, 6 days before Burning Man, will be the full eclipse, the shadow crossing the United States from the west coast to the east coast, and that is in the shape of an egg. The shadow itself, the concentration of it, will be in the shape of an egg. That is the Ogdoad. This is what the Egyptians believe in. The birthing of a new race from this egg, the egg containing the Ogdoad. There are 8 deities, the spirits of these deities. Now, CERN, the tie to CERN is that CERN is going to open the doorway to the abyss, releasing the spirits, but it is also about the resurrection of the DNA, the actual DNA of the Ogdoad deities, led by Osiris, Nimrod. Nimrod built the Tower of Babel. CERN is the Tower of Babel. So Burning Man is celebrating that they will be successful. According to Revelation 9, the opening of the abyss, that in September 23rd, Revelation 12, in the constellation Virgo, they are celebrating the birth of the Antichrist spirit. Okay, this is also the birthing of the body of the church body, and I refer you to Scotty Clark and his Eternal Rhythm Flow, ERF Ministries. If you go to ERF Ministries, he has some great research, and he and I are talking and collaborating now and putting a video together about the birthing of the body of the church at the same time that the birthing of the Antichrist spirit will be birthed. That Antichrist spirit will merge with the DNA of Osiris and will also lead to the resurrection of these Ogdo deities, these 8 deities. That's why everything you see at CERN and at Burning Man is octagonal. It represents the 8. They will be driving at Burning Man a golden spike into the center of what then becomes their city. They call it Black Rock City. It's arranged in a circle. The reason for the circle is the ritual that takes place within the circle. And I refer people back to the symmetry video produced by CERN, in which they have the white playa, the dry lake bed, which is where Burning Man is conducted, is in the playa. In the playa, they have a circle in the symmetry video, and in the circle, they have the white and the black DNA. That is symbolizing, the symmetry video is all about the resurrection of Osiris and the Ogdo deities. Now, that all is a mouthful, and I'll let you jump in there.
No, Tony, I mean, I'm sitting here, it's like getting some kind of digital download from you. It really is, and it's a lot for people to take in. But we'll go back over some of the bits there. And, you know, if you look at the Burning Man poster, the one with the actual golden spike, as you're calling it, Tony, I mean, just looking at that, for me, is very reminiscent indeed of the actual scenery in the symmetry video. And as soon as I seen that there and you started mentioning that, I mean, you can see the connection itself. But this Burning Man, I mean, it's been going on for a while, Tony, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. I think it's about 20 years. That's just kind of off the top of my head. But there's a connection. You know, I worked in Oakland as a paramedic for 27 years. Now, Oakland is pretty much the headquarters in the United States for everything satanic. In the west end of Oakland, they have a number of warehouses that have been converted into live-work studios for artists. We recently, I'd say, I don't know, back 6 months ago or whatever, we had a terrible tragedy, which was the burning of a warehouse that killed a number of people. I think there was about 30 people trapped and killed in this warehouse. And they used to call that the ghost ship. That warehouse was named the ghost ship. This appears, in my estimation, to have been a sacrifice. The reason I say that is that those warehouses and those artists build all of the structures, all of the artifacts for Burning Man, and then they are in convoys transported from Oakland to Nevada to the Burning Man in the Black Rock Desert next to the town of Gerlach. And again, I'm very familiar with this area. This is the connection between the satanic worship in Oakland and the Burning Man event itself. Burning Man is all about rituals. It is all about man. It is all about the resurrection of the dead. I'll also tell you this, that there are an awful lot of intelligence agency operatives as well as basic law enforcement types that infiltrate Burning Man and have for years. The reason is there are a lot of people in the leadership positions of the high-tech companies in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is right next to Oakland, okay? A lot of the leadership types in high-tech go to Burning Man from Silicon Valley. And the intel agencies are there to gather information and also to see who's, really involved with the rituals themselves, so to speak. So go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking the ones who are involved, they get elevated to the highest positions. And it sounds just like the kind of corrupt system that we've got running over here, Tony. It really, really does. But I mean, I remember you actually sharing with me that story about the Oakland area. And I wasn't actually aware of the fact it was so active in this kind of dark occult kind of stuff. And when it comes to dark occult stuff, then we have to go to CERN. Here's the connection again. And of course, this season, we've got a couple of minutes before we actually go to the break, Tony. I'd love for you just to tell the listeners again, kind of when the Awake machine is going to be firing up, because as usual, so much disinfo out there. Everything gets the blame on CERN, but you can actually clear this up for us. So when does Awake go live this year, Tony?
Yeah, the 8th of May. So just in a few weeks, Awake will start up, and they will be running all the way through until mid-December. Awake has been conjoined with the main ring of the Large Hadron Collider, and the combined accelerations of particles is 1,000-fold over what the main ring which itself is 17 miles long, 27 kilometers. 17 also, as Scotty Clark from ERF Ministries, he and I have been comparing, and he was pointing out to me the significance of the number 17. It's all about resurrection. And back to Burning Man. Burning Man, they're wanting people to submit their own relics around the main temple. The relics are built into a configuration that's 4 feet 4 inches square. 4 is totally significant by itself, but 4 feet and 4 inches is the 88. It is also the 8 deities, the odd dode. All of these items that will be placed by people have to fit within a 4 foot 4 inch square. That's exactly the size of the container that holds the DNA, if you will, the head of Osiris, the head of Nimrod. The DNA will be contained in a 4 by 4 square at CERN for its resurrection using the particle accelerator Awake that is conjoined with the main ring of the LHC. All of this happens at the same time.
That's right, folks. You heard Anthony Patch correctly. He said, for the resurrection of Osiris. Now, to find out what all that is about, now it all connects together with Burning Man, even with all the stuff that's going on over in Syria right now. You can join us after the break. So go make a quick cup of tea, cup of coffee, whatever it is you do. We'll be back in 3 short minutes. Remember to check out Anthony's work, anthonypatch.com.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Kev Baker, and we're moving into the second half of tonight's Kev Baker Show. Got Johnny Whistles here with me. Got our good friend, fellow host on the network, author, researcher, public speaker, and a whole heap of other things, Mr. Anthony Patch. Now, you can find his work over at anthonypatch.com. Check out his books, Covert Catastrophe, 2048, Diamonds in the Rough, and Revising Reality. He's going to be speaking at the upcoming Ground Zero event on the 14th of this month as well. Be sure to check that out. You can find details on his website, anthonypatch.com. Now, Anthony, he comes on here and he talks about strange things like resurrecting Osiris. Now, Anthony, that's a bold kind of claim to make. We've spoke about this on your show before, but I need you to get into this again, because I think when it comes to this information, repetition really does help it sink in, because it's not easy to understand, but if we hear it often enough, it starts making more sense. So how did you come to this kind of conclusion that they're going to be doing this with Osiris at CERN?
Well, I credit my good fellow researcher, Chris, from End Times Matrix News. Chris is an expert in Egyptology, and the reason for our book, Coalescence, is to bring together her work in the Egyptology with the high tech that I have with CERN and with DNA and quantum computers. And every time we compare notes, we have these amazing epiphanies of things that we hadn't seen, hadn't realized before. And so we're trying to get all this into this one book. But Chris is an expert in the family lineages, if you will, all the names of the deities, the godheads, the aspects, whether they're female or male or both at the same time, and as they relate to the planets and to the Kabbalah tree, and how all that relates to the quantum computers and the models of quantum computers that I've shared with your audience. So we see this interweaving of all of these ancient myths, and they're really not myths. The more that we look into this, the more that we realize that everything has always had to do with the resurrection of the dead from Hades. And so when you talk about research in the areas of DNA, and we talk about using particle accelerators for the purpose of mapping the human genome and getting down to the quantum particles of DNA, this is all for the purpose of reconfiguring, reconstructing DNA from the quantum scale on up. not just from the proteins and the nucleotides. We're talking about quantum particles being utilized to rebuild the DNA based upon the mathematics, specifically the Enochian mathematics, which is a form of communication using math between fallen angels and man. And the information derived from the fallen angels gives them the mathematical algorithms, geometric formulas for arranging quantum particles into the specific geometric configurations that are required to then form the DNA and initiate the replication of the DNA. And this is all information coming from the other side, so to speak, which is the reason for the D-Wave quantum computers, is to obtain the geometric arrangement of quantum particles to reconstruct the DNA of the dead. You do not have to have the actual DNA. All you need is the mathematical geometric arrangement of the DNA to then grow it. Now, in the case of Osiris, his head was actually preserved in a container 4 feet 4 inches square, and within that container is gold, what they referred to as monoatomic gold, as the sacred fire. Now, at Burning Man, they call it the spark of life, and that's what's on their website. That's what this is all about. The spark of light is conducted through monoatomic gold, the sacred fire that surrounds the actual head, the DNA, the literal head of Osiris, which is Nimrod, in a 4 foot 4 inch square cube container. Okay, here's the cube again. That was in Iraq. That was taken from Iraq to the Vatican. In September, it will be moved to CERN, to the center point of the main ring, the target point for the main ring and the Awake Linear Accelerator in the north area, the north field area, center point of the ring. The ring is the ritual. The ring is the symmetry video from CERN. This is the center point of Burning Man on the playa. The playa, just like the symmetry video. The center point of the playa is marked by the driving of the golden spike. That is the navel. They say it on the Burning Man site, but it is the navel of the world, the navel to the afterlife, to Hades. That is what they're celebrating, is the center point of hell. This has the mirror image to the navel in Jerusalem on the Dome of the Rock. In the rock that is enclosed in the golden dome of the Dome of the Rock is the hole leading to the Well of Souls. That hole is called the navel of the earth, leading to the Well of Souls. What is being done in Nevada, in the Black Rock Desert, is a reproduction of the Dome of the Rock, the navel of the earth, and the gateway, the hole to the Well of Souls. That's exactly what they're reproducing in the Black Rock Desert in Nevada, just prior to the September resurrection at CERN of the DNA of the dead, utilizing the mathematics derived through Enochian mathematics in the communication with the dead to obtain that information to reconstruct from quantum particles the actual DNA of the Ogdode, their 8 Egyptian deities of old. You don't have to have their actual DNA anymore, but in the case of Osiris, they do, and I'll stop there.
You know, Tony makes some really big, bold claims. He always has. He's come on here for a number of years now, and he's been proven right time and time again. And just recently, he's really been hammering home about this whole gold thing. He's been asking the listeners out there to send things in when they see gold. You've all responded brilliantly. I can only imagine Tony's inbox. It must be absolutely overflowing. But, you know, I look for my headlines as well. And Tony, yet more confirmation has come our way. And it's an article here, and it says DNA double helix structures crystals. Now, to cut a long story short, you can get into a little bit if you like, but basically what this is talking about is the structure of DNA and then building things upon it using pyramid-shaped gold. There you go, the gold crystals and DNA. It's almost as if you're prophetic, and I say that tongue-in-cheek, Tony.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but it's funny. You and I share articles back and forth, and almost simultaneously, because we're quantum entangled that way, we find the same things and share them at the same time. But what we laugh about, you and I, is they come out with these announcements now in rapid fire from mainstream science of things that I released in 2013 and in 2014 in my two books, Covert Catastrophe and 2048 Diamonds in the Rough. And we laugh about this because in my books I talk about third strand DNA, and that third strand being coated with a nano-thin coating of gold so as to impart digital information, which then triggers the replication of that third strand of DNA. That is the mark of the beast. That is the third strand of DNA as nanoparticles within all of us now because of the chemtrail spraying of these. These are nanoparticles that are awaiting through the 5G, full immersion 5G system, awaiting the triggering of those nanoparticles to then begin to replicate into a new form of DNA, birthing a new race. Now, the other article that you shared with me is the modified nanodiamonds. And that's something that's also in my books, talking about nanodiamonds that are utilized for computers, for a quantum computer in my books. And that's, again, where we kind of laugh and we keep seeing these articles pop up and we go, yep, that's in the book. Yep, that's in the book. I'm not a prophet. All I'm doing is sharing with the audience the fact that for years I have been following them in their own published journals, and I can see where they're headed. And so I put it into my books to alert people this is where we're headed. Now it's all coming out because September, they feel that they are going to achieve their goal, which has been going on now since the time of the Egyptian pharaohs. And the reason why they were mummified and the reason that they were preserved in monoatomic gold called the dust of the pharaohs, they were preserved for this time. And this is when they want to resurrect all of those pharaohs, deities, Ogdo leaders, you name it. This is what they want to do in September. So why September? Because September 23rd, not being a date setter, I'm just saying this is an observation. Revelation 12, the birthing in Virgo, okay? This is all about, as I said, the birthing of the Antichrist spirit. That's what they want to infuse with this resurrected DNA. This third strand of DNA also factors into everything that's going to happen in September with CERN, with DNA, with quantum computers, and Egyptology.
You know, Tony, with this, the eclipse and everything, and you talk about the birthing of the Antichrist and the birthing of this new church. Now, to stay on that kind of almost symbology, that imagery of birthing, I mean, are they going to open the portal at CERN on the 23rd, quite literally, almost like the womb opening up and the birthing process taking place?
I think that they coincide their events with technology, their events at CERN, let's say, with what they observe in the constellations, because everything is about the planets and the relationships of the planets, the deity names, the godheads that they've assigned to the planets, the power and the relationships of the planets have everything to do with what they're doing with the application of technology, moving out from the planets to the constellation, in this case, Revelation 12 and constellation Virgo, and also Leo factors into this as well. But the short discussion is what they observe in the heavens dictates what they do here on Earth. Now, am I going to be a date setter and say the portal's going to open on September 23rd? There's no way I can do that. All I can do is say this is what they're paying attention to, This is what they're putting in motion on Earth, on the planet, to coincide with what they're observing in the heavenlies. Now, when we talk about the eclipse, I will be in Idaho with Hear the Watchman in Idaho, August 18th to the 22nd, and I will be talking about what this eclipse portends. I'm going to give you the short version of it. It's a harbinger. It's a warning sign to the Gentiles. A solar eclipse is a warning to the Gentiles. A lunar eclipse is a warning to the Jews, to the Hebraic. But for us as Gentiles, the solar eclipse is a harbinger, a warning of cataclysm that's coming. The guys at Burning Man, following 6 days later, following this eclipse, are celebrating this rather than seeing it as a harbinger or a warning. The occultists see it as a reason to celebrate, and the eclipse is signifying as a warning that they want to open the abyss, and Revelation 9 says that they will be successful. When will they be successful? I don't know for sure, because I'm not a prophet. So go ahead.
And you know, Tony isn't a prophet, and he looks at the information that's out there, and he shares things with me. And the other day, he shared an absolute cracker. And you know, we've covered the Arch of Palmyra on this show before, and we pointed out the fact that these Luciferians and the elite cabal, they were taking this arch from the ancient city of Palmyra. It was a temple to Baal back in Babylonian times, and they were taking it on a world tour. Now, that world tour has now rolled into Florence in Italy. Now, it's going to be there from the 27th of March to the 27th of April. We've got the G7 over there. And Tony, what you showed me, it blew me away, because you were talking about Leo and Virgo there. Now, there's an actual exhibition that's on that accompanies this arch in Florence, and it's about the chimeras. Do you want to get into that, Tony?
Yeah, the chimera. If you go to, what was the website? Saturn. It was.
Yeah, I'll find the video, Tony. I'll share that.
Yeah, thank you. Anyways, Round Saturn's Eye did a great video about a week ago, and he almost got all the components. One of the things he shows in there is that there is a sculpture of a chimera. This is a mixture of DNA. It is the head of a lion, which is the constellation Leo, with the body of a dragon, okay, which is the birthing of the Antichrist spirit, the dragon. That sculpture that the G7 people are surrounding and celebrating they're celebrating the birth of the Antichrist spirit coming out of Leo, okay? Also pictured in this Round Saturn's Eye video is the statue of Neptune. This ties to Poseidon, okay? This is bloodline, this is lineage. Poseidon, it also goes to Cain,